If you are new to my first channel, this channel, I'm just on here sharing educational knowledge with you that I've accumulated over approximately 10 years of practicing law. So please take a moment to subscribe. And with that said, I'll begin. So in this video, we will be discussing contracts, but not your traditional ones. We are talking about potential ways that you can accidentally form a contract. So first, let's go over what a contract is. A contract is an agreement that creates an obligation to do something or not to do something. So the agreement can be multifaceted, meaning that it can serve many different purposes. This agreement can be between two or more people, a person or persons in a company or companies, or just between companies. Now, what does a contract involve? Well, it involves a promise or set of promises and a condition or set of conditions, either or. And one important point to make early on is that a contract comes in many different forms, which is the purpose of this video. It comes in many different forms other than your regular standard-looking written agreement with signatures and date lines at the bottom of the document. A few examples of other forms of contracts include text messages, and multiple emails that are sent back and forth between two or more people and or companies, or even a handshake that's accompanied by a communication of consent between two or more people. And by the way, side note, there are some exceptions, many exceptions with verbal agreements, so it's much more helpful to put your agreement in writing. Now, regardless, each of these examples has the potential to form a contract depending on the facts and circumstances of the situation. So let's talk about one of the steps to forming a contract. An offer. So we all think we know what an offer is, and to some extent, we all do know what an offer is. An offer can be a promise or an undertaking of some sort, or a commitment to enter into a contract that usually involves clear and definite essential terms or important terms. Now here's the thing. Whoever makes the offer, whether it's a person or a company, should actually be fully capable of making that offer, meaning they should be fully authorized to make the offer. So how am I going to offer you something that I don't have the right to make? I don't have the right to offer. Let's look at an example where there's no proper authorization. For example, I'll sell you this vehicle, but wait, the vehicle's not in my name. So I don't have legal authorization to sell you the vehicle because I do not own it. Now let's look at another example where authorization is valid and proper. A real estate agent who is selling a house on behalf of a property owner. So that real estate agent has a representation agreement with the property owner to sell the home. So with the representation agreement in place, that real estate agent is fully authorized and has the capacity to carry out acts on behalf of their client, the homeowner, and with their client's informed consent and acting in their client's best interest. Now let's go back to contracts coming in many different forms. It is helpful to think about your text messages, your emails, and other forms of written communication or verbal communication accompanied by verifiable actions. So generally, it's important to have clear and definite essential terms in an offer when you want to form a contract with that offer. And the idea behind clear and definite essential terms is that some contracts are more shorthand, quickly written, not thorough, created in a rush, missing pieces of information, and that can create a bad situation. So it's helpful to look for a few things. Do we know who made the offer? Do we know who's agreeing to the offer? Do we know what the offer is about or what exactly is being offered? Does it state the types of goods, services? How long is the contract supposed to last? Do we know when it begins, when it ends? Does it end? Or does it repeat itself until you end it or the other party ends it? Do we know the price? The terms related to pricing, if applicable. How much will the goods cost or the services cost? When does payment need to be made? If things do not go well, how do we end the contract? And naturally, it's much more helpful to have an enforceable contract with more details and specificity. It's much more helpful. Now, think about your text messages, your emails, and other forms of written communication that is not in a traditional contract format. So when the terms are not fully clear, sometimes agreements made in text messages or emails or other forms of writing that are not in standard contract can still create a contract that can be enforceable, especially in situations where, for example, you communicate back and forth in writing so it looks like there was an agreement, and then you or the other party performs certain actions based on that back and forth communication, which just supports the possibility that there was a mutual understanding between you and the other party on those text messages or in those emails, even though some terms were not clear. For example, if you have a gardening service and we message back and forth about your services, and somehow in my text messages you receive the impression that I want to hire you to please help me with my gardening, and you do the work, and then I come home and I see this beautiful garden, and I'm like, I didn't mean for you to do my garden. Well, it's time to look at the facts, the circumstances, and those text messages related to how we interacted leading up to and including the performance of your work on my garden. Because perhaps we did form an enforceable contract based on those written back and forth communications. And so in summary, if you are not ready to form a contract, it is very helpful to be careful about how you communicate with a person or a company who is ready to form a contract. And saying things like, for example, sounds good, or I concur, or that works for me, or I like that idea, or that sounds like a plan, or that's a plan, or I totally agree with that, or other types of positive communication can be misunderstood by the other party as acceptance of the offer that they made to work for you. So be careful and clear about your communications and your intentions with someone who is ready to do some work, especially when you are not ready for them to do that work for you. And for more education, please subscribe.